Have you ever listened to a song and made a music video for it in your head? Well, that is literally how parts of Cowboy Bebop were made. You've probably seen clips, heard about, read about, or most likely watched Cowboy Bebop. It is considered a masterpiece of an anime filled with amazing animation, an interesting and fresh take on a story, and highly stylized action with tons of charm and comedy. But all of this can never exist without music. And I don't just mean the soundtrack. I mean literally music. Cowboy Bebop takes heavy influence from music, not just in its soundtrack, but its writing. The title of the series is even named after a musical genre, bebop. Now, you may not be familiar with bebop music unless you're a wicked jazz fan or you grew up in the 40s. And at that point, if you're still watching anime in your 80s, you are cool as hell, man. You're living my dream. But it's not only a very important genre for musical and American history, but for the series as a whole. Bebop is responsible for how we typically view jazz. It has fast tempo, spontaneity, and improvisation, but there are a lot of elements that seem to mimic the show in general, because it does. Shinichiro Watanabe stated in an interview that he wanted to be a musician growing up, but switched to cinema and TV. He never stopped being a lover of music, however, even stating that, "The answer for me was that I knew music and that I loved music. Maybe I can make the best use of music as a director." So he enlisted the composer Yoko Kanno, and they worked together very unconventionally. Kanno was already working on the soundtrack before the visual production was even completed. Both of them would meet to discuss different ideas and create new ones. Watanabe made visuals based on Kanno's music, and Kanno made music inspired by Watanabe's visuals. This form of collaboration is jazz-like already, and just one example about how a love of jazz created this masterpiece, because there are some key elements in bebop music. Number one, it typically has faster tempos. It was much faster than swing music, and it wasn't meant for dancing, but it sure works for fighting. It makes the audience's brain move faster, which adds to the excitement of a fight scene. The show itself can be very fast-paced, and Spike himself often has to think on his feet. The second is small bands. Bebop music used much smaller bands than other jazz, and this allowed for musicians to provide long, intense solos that really showed their skills. Each member of the bebop crew is really a soloist. They don't need to be together, and they often do their own things for various missions. They have the skills, they can show them off, but they still have their small backing band. 3 is experimentation. Bebop musicians often try out different complex harmonies and rhythms, both to entertain and challenge fellow musicians. Cowboy Bebop as a series never sticks to one style. The soundtrack spans several genres itself, but each episode is really its own little story. One episode you get a take on the Alien movie, another the gang gets high on mushrooms, and then you have a killer clown horror storyline. That episode still freaks me out. But most important to the show is the bebop element of improvisation. Instead of playing completely arranged songs, bebop musicians will play a rhythm and soloists can improvise solos over them. I already mentioned how the video production improvised over the music, but is there anyone who improvises better than Spike? Spike regularly goes in with a loose plan and is confident in his abilities that he can take on whatever life throws at him. He regularly adapts to the flow of combat rather than planning ahead. And adding to all these jazz elements is the fantastic soundtrack of Yoko Kanno and the Seatbelts. Kanno is the Batman of jazz music. She has traveled throughout the United States to learn from various different jazz players and form her own style that would allow her to create iconic sonic brands for various different works. But most importantly, for this video anyway, Cowboy Bebop. She has taken so much inspiration from jazz music that some of this soundtrack is near plagiarism. And to achieve her style, she enlisted a band that she named the Seatbelts, but these guys didn't just create jazz. The soundtrack spans various genres from melancholy tunes to heavy metal riffs. Each episode is its own story in 24 minutes with its own soundtrack that adjusts to the episode. It turns the entire soundtrack into a compilation album. This is a very challenging thing for a composer to do, but Kanno pulls it off flawlessly. Check out this scene from Ballad of Fallen Angels and the song Rain as Spike enters to meet Vicious.
I don't feel a thing, and I stop remembering. The days are just like moments turn to hours.
any composer would have just made this song ominous and spooky. It would never have a guitar solo in it. It would be a long buildup of tension. But they didn't do this. This song is still ominous, but not naturally. This song is powerful, emotional, and even catchy. This is a song that someone would listen to casually, not even knowing its impact on the scene. This whole sequence shouldn't exist, and it takes a true creative mind to make this work. It's a perfect blend of animation, storytelling, and music. And this is why you can't have Cowboy Bebop without music. Not just because the soundtrack is creative, powerful, and iconic, but because it's also influenced the visual production and helped make this legendary. But having a good soundtrack doesn't mean you're gonna have a good product, and the live action series found that out the hard way. So to learn more about that, you can check out this video right here.